what's going on in the systems management space?
So a couple of things. Fairly light week in terms of what I've come across. If you want to share my screen,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you. So first things first, we got our monthly Intune service release. A couple of things that I noticed there. Sorry, I feel a sneeze coming on, so I'm trying to fight it off. um, some improvements with Endpoint Privilege Manager on ARM64 devices, so that's cool. That's one thing that I know we've been paying attention to, Johan. We get some questions about ARM64 here and there, and it's been an interesting topic for us, I think, too. But any improvements that we see there is a good thing. So new.
Seems like they have a hard time deciding on the name for it.
I noticed that. Is it privilege manager? Is it protection manager? I don't know. So we'll just stick with EPM. um, some new settings catalog for Apple, and then also new settings for the Windows lapse policy. So as I mentioned last week, I had a presentation up at a user group in Twin Cities last week, and lapse was one of the things that we talked about. So there are new settings available for automated account management, passphrase length, things like that. The interesting thing is, though, that I'm still waiting for is you could do these with custom CSPs already. What I really am hoping we get sooner rather than later is seeing them added to the settings catalog. Because if I go in here to my endpoint security section and account protection and go to create a new lapse policy, so let's just call this test because I just want to show you here. If we go in here and check password complexity, I'm still not seeing the passphrase options here. That's going to be a big win, I think, once we get those new options here, as well as the ability to manage that automatic account creation. Of course, all of these settings are also only for Windows 11 24H2 at the moment, as it relates to Intune. But like I said, this is really what I'm waiting for. I like things easy. I've really come to appreciate the simplicity of having the settings catalog available. It's much more like managing things in a group policy UI to me. And I don't like the risk of fat fingering a custom CSP. How about you, Johan?
Nope.
It's not my idea of a good time. The last thing that I wanted to mention here on the 2503 release is that for Mac OS, at least now, you can, Mac OS and iOS, you can set devices to say on the latest OS version using DDM, which we talked about a little bit a couple of weeks ago, coming off of the technical takeoff event. DDM is just a way to ensure that devices stay configured in the way that you have expected them to be configured, essentially. And with this new option, you can just say, hey, I want my Apple devices to be set at this at the latest OS version, whatever's available. Here's the delay. So say Apple releases a new point version today, but we want to be able to wait a week or so. We can set that in there, and then we can set install time. So more options, a little bit more control and flexibility around how we're dealing with software updates on our Apple devices. I know a lot of folks, Johan and I say we're mostly focused on the Windows side, but I've seen a lot of folks focusing on the Apple side that are very excited about this update. So I wanted to point that out as well. And then I also came across a blog post that I was reading. I didn't get through it all the way before we hopped on here, unfortunately. But Rudy did a post around ESP, the enrollment status page, and Autopilot, and how this can get stuck or fail to finish during the user ESP during Autopilot. So there's some nice troubleshooting steps here. And of course, as Rudy often does, talks through some of the internals on how these things actually work and how you might be affected by some of these issues. So I wanted to put this out there as well. But that is that's really what I had on my list for this week.
All right, then let me go ahead and share my screen then.
All right.
So I couldn't quite let go of the naming here in the what's new that you shared earlier. And it looks actually like they got both names wrong.
It's awesome.
Which is pretty impressive. As far as I'm concerned, it's endpoint privilege management, but there is indeed a role that is the endpoint privilege manager. But we believe it's this particular feature they are announcing the ARM support for, no matter what that happened to say there on the text. But I'm pretty sure the community can enlighten us if we should be too far off on that one. But yeah, that's my little note on that. Now, I did stumble across a blog post regarding PSADT and ServiceUI. As most of you probably know, ServiceUI is a component from Microsoft Deployment Toolkit that you can use to prompt for information either during an Intune application deployment or as well as a config manager task sequence that normally will not allow for interaction at all, but using this little component, you can. And depending on how you launch it and which process you attach it to, it may not be so happy. For example, if you try to launch it with a TS Progress UI process and that process doesn't happen to be running, well, then it's going to fail. So here was a little blog post that shows a nice little workaround to launch it together with a different process, in this case, the Explorer XC process. So I figured that could be helpful for folks using the PSADT. Then I spent some time this weekend working on a blog post restarting a post or a question that we got on our community. So we have up on our academy here, if I go to Hans here on my dashboard, we have this community where you can ask questions. Of course, we have some events and whatnot that we've been running here and there. But long story short, we got a question on how to do this. So I put together a blog post on how to install the RSAT tools for Windows 11 completely offline. So you simply download the ISO that Microsoft have for language edits optional features for Windows 11, extract it to a folder, and then a little bit of PowerShell to do different operations. In this case here, since the question was around adding the AD tools only, I added a line on how to do that. But as you can see here, this is how you install all of them, and this is how you simply list if they are available. So fairly straightforward. I tested on a machine that did not have internet access at all. I just took a VM and disconnected it from the internet, and it worked beautifully, and the components were added. So quick little tip there. Then another thing we've been covering in our trainings lately has been regarding Black Lotus mitigations, because that process is kind of painful. But Gary just announced that he and Mr. Mike Terrell, they're often lurking here on the office hours from time to time at least, they will be doing a session on MMS this year. So if you're going to MMS in Minneapolis in May, I would highly recommend to attend this session. As you can see here, this session covers not just the config manager implementation, but also running a remediation script out of Intune to do this mitigation. This is not something that's built into the platform. This is something that Gary and Mike put together here for that session. So hoping that it will be released to the community after MMS. They usually do, and I will certainly do my best to convince them to do so if I have the chance. But yeah, figured it was worth mentioning, a good session to attend to. Finally, Microsoft announced AI agents for Intune. Not available yet in my tenant. I'm assuming that's for later this year. Yeah, launching in May, it says, public preview. But long story short, once this feature gets released, you will have the ability in Intune to basically work with those agents there. I don't know if this would require the Microsoft security copilot or not, but I'm assuming time will tell for that. I'm hoping it won't, because that one is extremely costly at the moment. A couple of $1,000s just for a single compute unit, which is a little bit too heavy, I think, price-wise. But we'll see. The blog post is out there. I figured it was worth mentioning it. So some nice weekend read here.
Excellent.